On August 19, 1944, at Wehrmacht's headquarters in East Prussia, General Alfred Jodin was reviewing the latest intelligence reports from the Western Front, where the special forces were deployed. His staff calculated that the Allied supply lines stretched over 400 miles from the Normandy coast to Patton's Third Army. The U.S. military has outrun its supply capacity. Thom will have to stop for a few days, or maybe even just a few hours. No army could maintain such speed without sufficient fuel from Hitler's Wolf-Schänze headquarters. Jordan analyzes what every German general understands from their own experiences. An armored division consumes up to 150,000 gallons of fuel per day during an offensive. At this point, the American troops were about 400 miles from the supply depots, and it was considered unavoidable. Patton's Third Army would halt, giving WWII Group at the Sun River a chance to hold out until winter. However, what Jodin didn't know was that 125 miles away, 598 trucks had begun rolling east in a relentless convoy with their headlights blazing, defying military strategy and transporting 12,500 tons of supplies every 24 hours. The Red Bull Express convoy, a daring logistical operation that German military science never thought possible, is about to shatter all assumptions about mechanized warfare. In just 72 hours, Patter's tanks, which everyone thought would be crippled, would advance past German positions at the Seine River. In just 1 week, they will liberate Paris. In just 1 month, they will be standing at the German border. The most brilliant military minds at WMX are about to receive a lesson in American logistics that will completely change how they understand modern warfare. That lesson will be conveyed by 23,000 truck drivers, 75% of whom are African Americans, who have transformed a one-way highway system into the most efficient military supply route in history. The German General Staff's belief in the failure of American logistics stemmed from decades of military experience and recent observation. WWII pioneered the Blitz CRE tactic, which revolutionized coordinated warfare and understood the harsh realities of supply lines. But their campaign was repeatedly crippled when logistics failed to keep pace with tactical success. In Russia, the WWII advance collapsed due to initial Soviet resistance stemming from the inability to supply forces across vast distances. German trucks have broken down on Russian roads. Tractors still accounted for 80% of Germany's military transport, couldn't compare to the speed of the assaults. Differences in railroad standards meant that supplies were piled up hundreds of miles away from the front lines. General Heinrich von Ludwig, who would command the 47th Panzer Corps from September 1944, wrote in July that the Americans were facing logistical impossibilities similar to those we experienced in Russia. Their mechanized advantage became a disadvantage. Military vehicles require fuel, ammunition, and spare parts. They traveled 400 miles in 30 days. History has taught us what will happen next. That is a state of paralysis. German intelligence agencies have been closely monitoring the consumption patterns of the U.S. military. A Sherman tank consumes only 5 gallons of fuel on the road. The situation is much worse when traveling through difficult terrain. An infantry division needs 700 tons of supplies per day, while an armored division needs up to 1,000 tons. General Bat Thon commanded 12 divisions advancing across a 60-mile wide front. The numbers seem undeniable. 12,000 tons a day were transported 400 miles from the beach along damaged roads in a transport network that the German army had devastated during its retreat. General Seyfried West, who would later become Chief of Staff of the Marshall Fund State in September, calculated on the 20th that even if the U.S. military had countless trucks, they wouldn't have perfect roads and wouldn't encounter any technical problems. This is impossible. They also couldn't sustain the Python offensive for more than another 48 hours. The laws of physics cannot be violated, even by American industry. At 2 p.m. on August 25, 1944, at a recently recovered French castle, Colonel Lurin IS of the Motorized Transport Service confronted a room filled with skeptical officers. The numbers they provided were very clear. Hahn's Third Army is consuming supplies faster than any army in history, advancing at an unimaginable pace compared to logistical plans. Traditional delivery methods, such as rail transport and wagon trains, are no longer effective. Gentlemen, ISIS has announced that we will create a one-way road from SHBX and the beaches to the front lines. Each vehicle will operate 20 hours a day, stopping only for refueling, and in emergencies, we will transport a minimum of 12,500 tons per day. The name was borrowed from the term railway. Red Ball freight is an urgent shipment that takes priority above all else. Red Ball Express will operate on the same principle. Absolute priority, no delays, no exceptions. The technical requirements contradicted German military theory. Two parallel one-way roads, one for trucks going in, one for trucks returning. Operating 24 hours a day with headlights blazing, ignoring dimming regulations, and never stopping except for refueling or repairs. The distance between the convoys is 5 minutes. Maintaining an average speed of 35 mph, mobile maintenance units were spaced 50 miles apart, and military police checkpoints removed any vehicles moving below 25 mph. Colonel Chamsel Trasher, commander of the ADSE Advanced Unit in the communications area, reviewed the projected figures. We need 140 trucking companies, with at least 5,958 vehicles in operation and a 90% readiness rate. This is impossible according to any logistics book that has ever been written. In just 36 hours, what seemed impossible became a reality. On August 26, 1944, drivers of the 3916 Army Trucking Company drove 2.5-ton GMC CSKW trucks, also known as DO and DIP, carrying 105mm anti-aircraft ammunition to Peyton's anti-aircraft guns at Mellon, 300 miles to the east. The composition of the Red Bull Express team will certainly surprise German racial theorists. Of the 23,000 drivers operating this route, approximately 75% are Black American soldiers in a military that remains racially segregated. These men, who were denied entry to white restaurants or access to white-owned establishments in many parts of America, were the very people who maintained the military campaigns of some of the most prominent white generals. Within just a few hours, the drivers had developed their own culture. They painted slogans on the vehicles like Peyton's Blood Bank, Hitler's Music, the Chows are coming, the route from Detroit to Berlin. They made up their own traffic rules. Slower vehicles must move aside immediately. The broken down vehicles were pushed into the ditch. Any vehicle traveling at speeds below 32 kilometers per hour is considered to be obstructing traffic. By the 28th of month, German intelligence agencies began reporting an unprecedented phenomenon. Units from Clarem 116 reported from positions overlooking the main Red Bond route that there was a continuous line of vehicles, headlights visible from 20 kilometers away, with no gaps and no attempt at concealment. They estimate that up to 1,000 vehicles pass through every hour. The Americans ignored all military precautions. This is completely contrary to all principles in the German army. Headlights at night attract air attacks, while continuous lines of vehicles become perfect targets for artillery. The lack of spacing between vehicles means that a broken-down vehicle could an entire herd of elephants. However, Americans seem completely unconcerned. Lon Edgar Feuinger, leader of the 21st Penner Division, observed the Red Bull Express from cover on the 30th of month. His report to the B Corps headquarters reflected growing concern. The enemy is operating a supply system that we cannot understand. Genetic engineering vehicles operate every 30 seconds, day and night, without interruption. They didn't hide, they didn't disperse, and they didn't follow any rules that we knew. This is not military, but mass production applied to warfare. What the Germans couldn't understand was that American logistics operated on completely different principles. While the German army emphasized concealment, the Americans relied on sheer numbers. While the Germans prioritized saving on vehicles, the Americans assumed that about 20% of their vehicles will break down and plan for this scenario. While the Germans adhered to strict military procedures, the Americans were constantly improvising. The figures achieved by the Red Bull Express surpassed all of the Germans' calculations regarding what was possible in terms of logistics. During the first week from October 25th to 31st, 1944, 89,939 tons of goods were transported, averaging 12,848 tons per day, with a round-trip distance of 1,100 kilometers. The number of vehicles in operation was 5958, each making an average of 1 to 5 trips per day, consuming 300,000 gallons of fuel for the entire operation. German logistics experts recorded these figures from American documents and claimed they were just propaganda. But the reality is that these numbers not only exist, but are also increasing rapidly. By May 5th, the Red Bull Express had established a rhythm that German logistics officials could not have imagined, given their continued reliance on horse-drawn carriages for 80% of their transport. The convoys depart every 5 minutes from the starting point on the west. On average, each convoy consists of 67 people with a standard load capacity of 5 tons, and frequently exceeds the limit by up to 7 tons. The one-way travel time for 350 miles is approximately 14 hours, and the return time at each end of the route is 2 hours. Therefore, the vehicles were not in continuous operation at any given time. Red Bull Express created hourly innovations as drivers and mechanics tackled problems that German military science considered insurmountable. When vehicles broke down, around 1,800 vehicles a day, mobile maintenance units carried out roadside repairs. Mechanics developed a 15-minute classification system for repairing or towing vehicles off the road. The parts were removed from vehicles that could not be repaired. The engine was replaced in 45 minutes thanks to mobile cranes. When the main route of Red Ball became congested, drivers created alternative routes. They hijacked French buses to transport staff and freed up trucks for goods. They also borrowed a car from Germany, painted it olive green, and put it into use. They built bypasses around the destroyed bridges using rubble from bombed buildings as the road surface. The Germans observed that this chaos was creating order, but they couldn't understand it. German logistics theory emphasizes careful planning, maintenance schedules, and proper procedures. The US violated every principle, but their system worked faster instead of collapsing. One thing that shocked German observers the most was the way the US managed fuel. Red Bull Express consumes up to 300 gallons of gasoline per day just for its operations. That's more fuel than many German armies received for all purposes. However, fuel shortages never occurred. The Americans created a parallel marvel called Operation Pluto. It is a system of fuel pipelines running under the sea across the English Channel. By September 1944, fuel was flowing through underwater pipes without even being detected by German intelligence. Forward fuel depots were established every 25 miles along the Red Ball route. The tanker trucks also have their own convoy system, ensuring that no vehicle has to wait more than 10 minutes to refuel. Major General Waterlemon observed this from aerial reconnaissance photographs. He realized that the Americans had fuel stockpiles larger than our entire strategic reserves. They consume more fuel transport than the entire amount of fuel we allocate to the panzer divisions. This is not war in the way we understand it. This is an industrial overflow. Red Bull Express not only ensures reliable delivery, but also significantly increases speed. German military doctrine estimated that an armored division could advance between 20 and 30 miles per day under optimal conditions. Meanwhile, Patton's divisions were supplied with logistics via the Red Bond Express. On average, they progressed 40 to 60 miles per day for weeks on end. On September 1, 1944, the 4th Armored Division advanced 35 miles in the morning, then stopped for resupply at noon. The Red Ball trucks were loaded with fuel and medical supplies, allowing the division to advance another 32 miles in the afternoon. This advance of 67 miles in a single day disrupted all of Germany's defensive plans. Had originally anticipated a maximum advance of only 30 miles per day, but Hyen, upon reviewing reports from the original orchestration, refused to believe this. According to him, no armored force could advance 60 miles a day for a week. A mechanical failure alone would have prevented that. He considered it propaganda or a misunderstanding. However, information from American radio conversations has confirmed this. What worried the German commanders even more was that the Americans had openly broadcast their positions without encryption with absolute confidence and the ability to move faster than any German response. By September 0, 1944, German intelligence had gathered comprehensive reports on the Red Bull Express. These things could have disastrous consequences for WMX's plans. All assumptions about American military capabilities need to be re-evaluated. The report also points out observations that contradict German military theory. Americans use vehicles wastefully, often abandoning broken-down trucks instead of repairing them. Drivers who use stimulants for extended periods of time violate all personnel management principles. They lack the discipline of covert operations, leaving the entire system vulnerable to airstrikes that never actually occurred. A mechanical failure rate of up to 30% per day is still being surpassed thanks to an abundance of resources that would bankrupt any European army. Military Commissioner WER Model's reaction revealed growing desperation. If these reports are accurate, we are not facing a stronger army, but a superior civilization. They don't need to try to hide it because they're not afraid of us. They waste resources because they have an inexhaustible supply. We cannot defeat this with military tactics. The Red Bull Express drivers paid a physical price that German observers did not see. They had worked continuously for 72 hours, experiencing hallucinations due to exhaustion and the use of Benzedrine. During the Red Bond's operational period, approximately 300 drivers died in accidents. Trucks collide in the fog, overturn on damaged roads, or catch fire due to overheating engines. Nevertheless, their spirits remained very high. These men, mostly African Americans who had been deprived of equal rights in their home countries, understood that they were making history. Each leg of the Red Bull Express journey serves as a critique of Hitler's racist theories. The captured German officers clearly confirmed the impact of this convoy. For example, Hans Fork, captured in September 1944, told interrogators, "We knew we had failed to understand your supply system. You violated every rule, wasted fuel, abandoned vehicles, stressed out drivers, yet succeeded thanks to sheer numbers. You industrialized the war beyond our comprehension." The psychological pressure on the German army was terrifying. VMX soldiers could hear the sound of American trucks all night. Every night, the deafening roar of engines and the abundant supply overwhelmed them. While German soldiers had only 3 rounds per gun, the Americans carried millions. That sound became a psychological weapon. German engineers were also astonished by the American trucks. The GMC CKW 2.5-ton truck, the backbone of the Red Bull Express fleet, was a symbol of perfection in mass production. General Motors produced over 500,000 of these trucks before the war ended, more than the entire German army had in total, including all types. These trucks featured innovations the Germans had never adopted, such as standard 4-wheel drive, automatic tire inflation, water resistance allowing passage through 30 centimeters of terrain, low-quality fuel engines that required no adjustments, and efficient winter repair systems. Even more impressive was the American maintenance philosophy. While the Germans repaired engines, the Americans replaced them. Where the Germans managed parts, the Americans discarded entire vehicles for minor problems. Where the Germans had chief mechanics, the Americans had thousands of skilled mechanics capable of performing 80% of the repairs. As the front moved eastward, the Red Bull Express fleet quickly adapted, much to the surprise of German planning officers. Weeks of preparation were often required for major changes in logistics. When the original route to Chara could no longer meet demand, the Americans initiated expansions of the Red Bull Express overnight. Routes like the White Ball Express from Rouen to Paris, the Green Diamond from Cherbourg to railway transfer points, and many others were operational within 48 hours. While German officers needed weeks to plan similar operations, the Americans simply repainted road signs, allocated trucks, and started rolling. The overwhelming presence of African American drivers in the Red Bull Express fleet caused German racial theorists to confront ideological contradictions. Their anti-American doctrine held that black people were inferior, incapable of performing technical work, and lacking creativity. Yet these drivers performed logistical miracles that the German forces could not match. African American soldiers, they understood the harsh realities of their situation. They knew what the Nazis thought of them. This only fueled their driving. Every mile they traveled proved Hitler wrong. They were fighting racism with the keys to their trucks, defeating Nazi ideology with superior performance. Some German prisoners of war forced to load cargo onto Red Bull trucks saw their worldview turned upside down, working alongside African American sergeants who calculated weights faster than German engineers, who spoke better English than German English teachers, and who treated prisoners fairly, despite Nazi propaganda about racist behavior. The Red Bull Express system required infrastructure that the Germans considered impossible to build in combat conditions. Engineers built or reinforced 40 bridges, created 15 large fuel depots, established 26 maintenance stations, and constructed 8 temporary cities for the drivers' vehicles. All while this operation was underway, the bridge at Monte had been destroyed by German engineers to disrupt American logistics. The German army calculated that replacing it would take at least 6 weeks, but American engineers built a temporary bridge in just 14 hours. While Red Bond convoys only had to take an 8-meter detour on makeshift bulldozer-built roads, the German engineers watched the American construction methods with amazement. No planning meetings, no detailed blueprints, just immediate action. They built faster than the Germans could destroy, creating infrastructure that appeared like a miracle in the fields of France. One achievement of the Red Bull Express particularly shocked the German artillery officers. The rate of ammunition supply exceeded even their highest theoretical calculations. American artillery units fired without restriction, a luxury no German unit had enjoyed since 1950. 1942, during the attack on the fortifications at M in September 1944, the main XDX artillery fired 100,000 rounds in 24 hours. The Red Bull Express system delivered all of that ammunition, plus a 20% reserve. Meanwhile, the German artillery defending the MES was limited to only 50 rounds per gun per day. The disparity was enormous. The American guns fired continuously for hours, while German artillery officers calculated that such firing required 50 truckloads of ammunition per hour. Red Ball supplied enough without stopping. However, Red Ball Express consumed vehicles at a rate that would underscore any other army. By the end of September, mechanical breakdowns had reached dizzying levels. The average lifespan of a vehicle was 10,000 miles, compared to the normal 30,000. The daily breakdown rate was 30% of the vehicles were operational. Each week, 500 engines had to be replaced and 10,000 tires were consumed. Over 500 vehicles were destroyed or abandoned, yet operations did not slow down. American production had anticipated such losses. Ships docked at French ports each week carrying hundreds of new trucks. Replacement drivers were trained for 2 days and immediately integrated into the convoys. German calculations showed that the Americans destroyed more trucks each week than they owned in France. Yet, American transport capacity increased instead of decreased. They achieved what the Germans considered impossible: logistics that outpaced consumption. French residents along the Red Bond route witnessed the abundance of American transport, a stark contrast to the years of scarcity under the German occupation. The psychological impact on the occupied populations was immediate and profound. Red Bull Drivers Express, especially African Americans, often shared their food rations with French civilians despite regulations prohibiting it. At each stop, children would gather and the drivers would give them snacks, cigarettes, and soap. The contrast with the German occupation was stark. Americans freely gave away things that the Germans had distributed under strict rationing. German intelligence noted the propaganda effect. The French people began to believe that American victory was inevitable. They took the constant movement of the trucks as proof. Resistance increased by 400% along the Red Ball routes. People who had accepted the occupation now began to protest fiercely. By early September 1944, the Red Bull Express faced its greatest challenge. Pol Pot's Third Army had advanced so far that even the Red Ball was struggling to maintain its supply rate. The round-trip journeys were now exceeding 700 miles. Drivers were exhausted, vehicles were starting to break down, and German intelligence detected the pressure. Major General Hans F. Mantoen reported on the 8th that American supply lines were showing signs of collapse. The time between convoys had increased from 5 to 15 minutes, and vehicle speeds had decreased. This was our opportunity. However, the Americans' adaptability surprised the Germans. Within 72 hours, the Red Bull Express was reorganized, creating intermediate transfer points, reducing the driving distance to 350 miles, implementing a driver rotation system, establishing forward maintenance bases, and doubling the number of vehicles allocated. By the 12th, the actual volume of goods delivered had increased. The crisis, which should have halted Peyton's operations, instead made the system stronger. To supplement the Red Bull Express, the Americans deployed another logistical solution that the Germans considered superior. It was unthinkable to provide large-scale air cargo. C-47 transport planes began delivering vital supplies directly to frontline units, each carrying 3 tons. By May 16, 1944, WWII observers counted 900 transport flights a day, delivering no less than 2,700 tons by air. The LFA Air Force at its peak could only manage 300 tons a day to Stalinger and considered this a maximum effort. The Americans used transport planes like trucks, unconcerned about fighter protection or fuel limits. They were willing to accept losses and overwhelm them with sheer numbers. The German army could not compete with this powerful industrial capability. The Red Bull Express service operated under command principles that violated the German military hierarchy. Young officers were introduced. These decisions were originally made by the generals in the German army. Meanwhile, sergeants commanded operations far larger than what German colonels could manage. This hierarchical structure baffled German observers. The American logistics system operated without clear central control. Each lieutenant acted like a general, and each sergeant like a colonel. Chaos should have ensued, but they achieved efficiency. The German army could not keep up with its rigid hierarchical system. By October 1944, as the advancing railroads began to reduce the need for the Redmond Express, the mission, originally planned for 10 days, stretched to 82 days, transporting 412,000 tons of cargo over a distance of 122 million ton-miles. The German commanders, now fighting on their own borders, reflected on what they had witnessed. Field Marshal Model wrote in his final report, "The defeat wasn't primarily due to American tanks or planes. It was the American trucks that defeated us." The Red Bull Express service proved that in modern warfare, logistics is strategy. The switch to rail transport was a miracle. American railway engineers restored 1,000 meters of destroyed French line while Red Bull was still operational. They installed new tracks faster than the Germans could destroy, often using captured German railway equipment. The final statistics of Red Bull Express refuted any calculations of German logistical capabilities. In 82 days of operation, they transported 412,193 tons of goods, 22 million ton-miles. On average, 5,958 vehicles, sometimes reaching 7,000. A total of 23,000 drivers were employed, consuming 700,000 gallons of fuel per day, 40,000 tons of ammunition for the P1 alone, and 15 million rifles. 135,000 tons of food and medical supplies. Viewing these figures in captivity, the German officers admitted that they had calculated American logistics based on European precedent. They had multiplied their best performance by 3 and assumed that was the maximum limit for the Americans. They were 10 times wrong. Beyond volume and distance, the Red Bull Express had achieved something far more profound. It had shattered the Germans' belief in their own military superiority. The German soldiers, who had once looked down on the Americans as weak and dependent on machinery, now watched as these Americans performed logistical feats thanks to their determination and abundant industrial resources. The German war prisoners stood silently by the prison fence, counting the Red Bull trucks as they passed. Some wept. They understood what it meant. Not only could the Americans supply their army, but they could also waste far more than the Germans could produce. They were witnessing it. His worldview crumbled with each truck. The Red Bull Express forced the American military to confront an unexpected reality about racial discrimination. The success of this operation was largely due to the black soldiers, who were still being discriminated against, treated unfairly, and barred from participating in combat roles. In September 1944, General Eisenhower visited Red Bull's operations and saw the contradictions within the army. His advisor, Captain Harry Butcher, recorded this moment. The general watched the black drivers working continuously for 20 hours. He said, "These men are bringing victory to the war like any infantryman. We need to rethink many things." The success of Red Bond created pressure for more active military integration, contributing to the elimination of racial segregation within the U.S. military. 3 years later, black soldiers had proven their capabilities in France. They are people who are ready to compete with anyone when given the right tools and opportunities. Their battle was against Red Bull, and they won decisively. German racial theorists have struggled to explain this contradiction. SS publications on racial science ceased mentioning American logistics because the evidence was so strong it was irrefutable, and also too damaging to acknowledge. After the war, German military engineers thoroughly studied the operations of the Red Bull Express. The lessons learned from that experience have revolutionized logistics thinking worldwide. Large volumes of goods can overcome inefficiencies. Mechanical redundancies minimize weaknesses. Decentralization enables acceleration, and standardization increases capabilities. Human endurance has its limits, but it's far greater than people imagine. General Franz Hauter, former chief of staff of the German army, wrote in 1950, "Red Bull Express has proven that logistics determine strategy, not the other way around." Americans understand this, but we learned it too late. Among the 23 unmanned characters in Red Bond, many stories of bravery emerged that the German military found difficult to comprehend within their own military framework. These are stories that have been verified by military records. Corporal John L. Houston drove continuously for 48 hours to deliver ammunition to the 2nd Armored Division at Camera. Even though he dozed off 3 times, he still managed to get other drivers to wake him up. Ben Mead Booker T. Washington ran into trouble when a vehicle carrying medical supplies caught fire due to overheating brakes. Instead of fleeing as required by regulations, he drove the burning car 2 miles to a field hospital and jumped out when the flames reached the driver's side. These supplies saved the lives of many wounded soldiers on both sides. Stories like these have revealed American military culture thousands of times. In the eyes of the German army, the spirit of individual initiative, calculated risk-taking, and completing missions beyond all regulations was paramount. In a desperate effort, the German army attempted to create their own version of the Red Bull Express in late 1944. Operation R during the Battle of Bung included plans to use captured American trucks to create German supply routes. But this attempt failed immediately. The German drivers were unable to keep up with the speed of the American army. Even the repair technicians couldn't fix the American equipment quickly enough. Germany's fuel supply cannot keep up with high consumption levels. More importantly, the Germans could not replicate the American attitude toward abundant resources. Obstinate, the operations commander, reported, "We captured 50 American trucks. Within a week, 30 were beyond repair. If they were Americans, they would have replaced them. We tried to repair them, But that difference explains our failure. The winter of 1944-1945 was the final test for the Red Bull Express system. The freezing rain, snow, and ice should have stopped all transport. German doctrine dictated that transport would become impossible below 10 miles per hour. Yet the Red Bull Express continued to operate. Drivers covered the tires with chains, poured alcohol into the radiators, and continued moving. Speeds were reduced from 35 to 15 miles per hour, but the cargo was still delivered. German observers reported that ice-covered convoys moving through the blizzard had halted the advance of tank divisions. Armor. The Americans had created a logistics system that operated effectively regardless of weather, terrain, or enemy action. It wasn't beautiful or efficient by German standards, but it was truly unstoppable. By May 1945, captured German logistics officers were forced to study the Red Bull Express's operation to record history. Their conclusions were far from positive and shattered the pride of the German army. Infantry General Friedrich, she summarized the Red Bull Express as representing a type of warfare we had never imagined. The Americans had created a temporary civilization. Thousands of people, thousands of vehicles, millions of tons of goods existed only to serve the army and then vanished when no longer needed. We built sustainable infrastructure over many years. Meanwhile, they created superior temporary systems in just a few days. The most insightful analysis came from General Adrian, considered the father of German armored warfare. We had the Blitzkrieg was invented but never solved its fundamental limitation, logistics. The Americans solved this problem through industrial surplus that we considered impossible. The Red Bull Express wasn't a supply line, but a river of material overflowing our forces. The Red Bull Express cost the U.S. approximately $100 million in 1944, including destroyed vehicles, fuel consumption, damaged roads, and French claims for damages. German staff officers accustomed to managing dire situations couldn't comprehend this number, but the Americans saw it as a relief. This operation helped the U.S. capture 400,000 German troops, liberate France, Belgium, and Luxembourg, and shorten the war by about 6 months. Each day of war cost the U.S. $250 million. The Red Bull Express became completely self-sufficient in just one day, reducing the intensity of the conflict. Lieutenant General John Seeley, who commanded logistics for the European theater, said, "We have spent 5,000 trucks and 23,000 troops to destroy the German army in France in any previous war. Those would be catastrophic losses. During the industrial war in America, high operating costs were acceptable. An unexpected consequence of Red Bull Express was its revolutionary impact on post-war civilian logistics. Many drivers returned to the U.S. with experience operating the world's largest transportation network. These veterans founded transportation companies and designed intermodal routes, forming the modern American logistics industry. Companies like Yellow Freight, Roadway, and Consolidated Freightways were all founded by Red Bull veterans who adapted military logistics and civilian commerce. They learned in France that volume of goods is more important than efficiency, speed is more important than perfection, and if you can keep trucks running 24 hours a day, you can transport anything in the world. Military historians all agree that Red Bull Express was a decisive logistical operation on the European battlefield. Without it, Hans' advance would stop. Paris would fall to the enemy within a few weeks, and the Germans would have established successful winter defenses. This operation demonstrated the U.S. military strategy, which emphasizes logistics over tactics. While German officers studied close-up battlefield tactics, the Americans learned about the Detroit assembly line and railroad schedules. Red Bull Express has shown that in modern warfare, the ability to supply forces is more important than tactical excellence in order to win. On September 15, 1944, Field Marshal von Rundert, from the High Command of the German Army in the West, received full intelligence on the Red Bull Express. After reviewing the reports for hours, he summoned his staff and announced, "Gentlemen, we are facing something beyond a military solution. The Americans have created a supply system that makes distance meaningless. Our strategy used to assume there would be a point where the attacking force would overwhelm the supply, but that point no longer exists. They have revolutionized warfare, and we are fighting old-fashioned warfare." The officer in charge of Ober's hand-speed operations suggested blocking the Red Bull routes with remaining Waffe force. Von Rundert's response showed insight. "How are we going to stop them? They have 6,000 trucks. If we destroy 1,000, which we can't do, they'll replace them within a week. We need to destroy 200 trucks a day just to keep up with their production." And all in all, we didn't even have 200 planes. Behind the cold numbers were human stories that reflected the nature of Americans to German observers. Drivers who hadn't slept for 3 days refused rest because they didn't want their trucks to fail. Mechanics worked in the freezing rain just to keep the convoys moving. Teenagers lied about their age to drive trucks. Such stories became widespread throughout the war and created an image that demoralized the Germans. Americans weren't as weak as propaganda portrayed them. They pushed themselves more than the Germans pushed their horses. But that came from willingness, not from fear. This made them a far greater threat than German theory could comprehend. Red Ball Express became an unintentional propaganda tool, more powerful than any planned campaign. German soldiers could hear the sounds of the convoys at night, sounded like never-ending streams of vehicles. This became a form of psychological warfare. German units reported hearing these ghostly convoys, which significantly demoralized them. Knowing that the American army had unlimited supplies while the Germans had to conserve ammunition, this created despair and reduced combat effectiveness. American psychological warfare units recognized this and began broadcasting truck engine noises toward German lines when no actual convoys were present. These ghost vehicles were reported as real convoys, demonstrating the psychological damage the Red Bull Express inflicted. In November 1944, when railroads were partially restored, the Red Bull Express officially ceased operations. But its methods had permanently revolutionized military logistics. The concept of continuous, large-scale, albeit wasteful, but effective supply became American military doctrine. The ultimate innovation was the speed of disintegration, a large-scale operation with 23, Air Force, 6, no vehicles and hundreds of facilities disappeared in just 72 hours. Military units were redistributed, vehicles were repurposed, and routes returned to civilian use. Meanwhile, it took the Germans months to create smaller operations and years to dismantle them. The Americans built what they needed, used it, then discarded it, and built something new and better. When German generals surrendered in May 1945, many cited the Red Bull Express as proof of the hopelessness of continuing resistance. Pensa soldier Hassan Mantorian said in interrogation, "When we understood your logistical capabilities, we knew the war was lost. You can supply to the army faster than we can destroy them. The Red Bull Express is a weapon we cannot defend against." Marshal Albert Kessler, one of Germany's most talented commanders, when asked what surprised him most about the American army, replied, "Not the tanks, not the planes, but the trucks." Red Bull Express demonstrates that you have mobilized the full productive capacity of society and the military. We are fighting against your factories. More than just soldiers, the final figures of Red Bull Express became a testament to the power of American industrial warfare. The total volume of goods transported amounted to 412,193 tons. The total distance traveled was 120 million ton-miles, with 958 trucks used daily in some years, an average of 7, and none at peak times. With 23 drivers involved, the operation ran for 82 days without drivers, consumed 57 million gallons of fuel, had no damaged tires, and over 5 years without any vehicles destroyed, at a cost of $100 million. The German divisions were defeated thanks to a supply advantage of up to 47, estimated to reduce the war duration by 180 days. These figures tell a story that transcends military operations, marking a moment when warfare changed forever, when industrial capability became more important than tactical excellence, and when logistics dictated strategy rather than merely serving it. In 1994, to mark the 50th anniversary of its departure, the United States Postal Service issued a commemorative stamp honoring Red Bull Express at the National Postal Museum in Washington, D.C. The commemoration ceremony acknowledged a campaign previously overshadowed by combat operations, but which played an equally decisive role in the Allied victory. The veterans in attendance shared their pride in a campaign that demonstrated that the industrial strength and individual determination of Americans can overcome any obstacle. They overcame exhaustion, mechanical failures, and harsh weather conditions. The vast majority of the soldiers were black who faced discrimination and lack of recognition throughout the war, but they delivered the victory at a speed of 35 miles per hour. Red Bond Express demonstrated that in modern warfare, logistics is not just support, but a primary effort. This campaign demonstrates that industrial democracy can mobilize resources on a scale of performance that authoritarianism cannot match. The German generals who had once mocked American logistics were silenced by 6,000 trucks carrying 12,500 tons of goods daily across 700 meters of liberated French territory. They were thinking that the Americans would follow the traditional European approach, conserving resources and advancing cautiously. Instead, the Americans created a massive shipping wave that overwhelmed the German forces with an abundance of allies. The success of the campaign did not stem from military genius, but from characteristics in the Americans that the Germans never understood: industrial surplus, mechanical capabilities, adaptability, and most importantly, the proactive spirit of the soldiers. Those who made decisions on their own that, according to German military regulations, would require the Marshal's approval. In his memoirs, George S.B.T. Paun, the leader of the Third Army, the main unit that benefited from the Red Bull Express, paid a high tribute to the truck drivers. The Red Bull Express drivers deserve as much credit as any fighting unit in defeating Germany. They overcame exhaustion, equipment malfunctions, and harsh weather. Without them, the Third Army would not have been able to advance. Without movement, we won't win. They were black soldiers, for the most part, who faced discrimination and lack of recognition. But they won the war just as surely as any soldier. History must acknowledge this truth. That fact is the ultimate proof for Red Bull Express. 23,000 drivers, mostly African Americans, drove 6,000 trucks on a one-way road toward victory. To accomplish what German military science declared impossible. They enabled troops to advance faster than physics allowed, maintained a tempo beyond human endurance, and proved that in modern warfare, the side with more trucks will win against the side with better tactics. The German generals who had once mocked American logistics as costly and undisciplined were unable to maintain it. 82 days later, those same generals surrendered to the troops supplied by Red Bull Express. Finally, understands that American trucks have defeated German tanks, that industrial surplus has overshadowed military excellence, and that logistics has become strategic. The Red Bull Express ended on November 16, 1944, but its influence continues to resonate in military history. In the industrial age, victory does not belong to the bravest warriors or the most brilliant generals, but to the nation that can provide the most logistical support, the fastest and the furthest. German generals had mocked American logistical capabilities in August. In 1944, he signed the surrender document in May 1945, defeated by 23,000 truck drivers who changed the course of the war with their speed of 35 miles per hour. Their story deserves to be remembered alongside the greatest military campaigns in history. It's not because of its subtlety or effectiveness, since it lacks both, but because it works. The Red Bull Express convoy kept the fighting style unchanged, forcing the Germans to retreat and proving that in modern warfare, truck convoys are far more important than tank columns. The streets of France still bear the traces of the Red Bull Express. These ruts were created by overloaded trucks. The bridges were being hastily repaired, and the sides of the road were littered with abandoned vehicles. But the greatest legacy of this campaign is the speed of victory achieved by the leading forces. Every day that war is shortened saves thousands of lives, and Red Bull Express has been doing that for months. In the end, the German generals learned the hardest lesson of modern warfare. Amateurs talk about tactics, professionals talk about logistics. Meanwhile, the Americans were talking about trucks. Red Bull Express is the loudest voice of America, roared by 6,000 constantly running engines, transporting both democracy and destruction at 35 miles per hour on a one-way road to victory. A German officer, whose name has been forgotten in history, left behind a famous quote uttered by a Red Bull driver during a 1994 commemoration. Standing by a roadside in Belgium, watching the endless stream of American trucks, the officer spoke in heavy English to his captured men. "We were prepared for everything. Your tanks, your planes, your warships. We never prepared for your trucks. How do you defeat an enemy who has more trucks than you have a link?" The answer came to him in 5-minute intervals dictated by weary Americans rewriting the rules of war. With a single delivery, Red Bull Express transformed logistics into strategy, supply into victory, and trucks into the most decisive weapon in the European war. The German generals stopped laughing when they understood the truth. But at that moment, Paun was right outside their city gates, supplied by the largest logistical operation in military history.